Not everybody can handle psychology, not its source material, humans, not its learning material, not its inevitable path forward. Reading about human suffering, listening to people reveal their inner demons or their painful experiences is not a challenge lightly accepted. So I have often thought, what kind of person would do it? Obviously, I have previously spoken with other psychologists, but when I was at university where I studied politics, the psychology course started with 200 students, all positive and looking forward to their experiences, but finished with about 30. This was just the first year. In Anna is a variant I had not considered. You could tell from her responses how positive a person she is, positive and experienced and aware. I could also add to that list determined, active and ambitious, but these terms are not what drive her. She is passionate about what she does, why she does it, and for whom. She will finish her book in 2024. She will begin a second round of her women's group in March, and she is working on her social media profile to bring her work to a wider audience. Thank you, Anna, for your time, and I look forward to the next episode. Enjoy.
Dong weche pek kod welo mabiro e tuanda mic. Dong parodit kod jok mawuoye tuanda mic. Seche tin sud buta wawinji e tuanda mic. Wola wachokre wabed piny bi wawinje ero chako momit ndi and a podcast makende.
I'm really happy to say that I'm joined by Anna, who is a debutant on my podcast. Anna, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you very much. How are you?
Fine, thank you. One of my basketball teammates, Ty, who's also been on the show, he's a poet, he introduced us a few weeks ago. And it's interesting because I've always wanted to speak to somebody in your area. And so this was great that such an opportunity was just presented to me. So your area of expertise is psychology.
Yes, that's right. Thank you very much for having me. And it's also been a secret wish of mine to speak on a podcast. So I'm also very happy that this opportunity came my way. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. And yeah, we've talked a little bit outside of the podcast, and we both have many different interests. In some cases, those interests really do converge. But you work on many projects. Would you like to talk about some of them before we jump into our main theme for the day?
Beforehand, I was working as a quote unquote normal employee at the Red Cross. And then I started my own projects. And I would say mainly I'm a psychologist who is like counseling and accompanying people on their journeys. That can be one-on-one or in seminars. And on the other hand side, I'm a writer. So I've been writing since I was a child. And this year started to actually dedicate some time to writing again and starting to write a book, which I hope that I can maybe now I'm being courageous here, but maybe can publish next year, and which is also related to psychology and to the fields that I'm interested in. Like this is mainly about empowerment and making conscious decisions, I would say, which is like a process. Like people sometimes refer to it as a decision that you can do, like the decision to be authentic or the decision to make a free decision. For me, it's like I consider it more complicated and a lot of work that has to be done to get to that place. And I'm happy to help people access that point of freedom or of consciousness.
Yeah, I think it's great. There are a lot of similarities for our missions. I mean, I do mine in an amatorial context, you do yours in a professional context, but essentially trying to find ways in which I can facilitate and help other people reach their goal even though I would perhaps only be a very small brick in the wall, whereas you would present a far more supportive structure for helping them to put together whatever it is that they wanted to achieve. I find it fascinating because you say it's not as easy as we would like it to perhaps be, to say, I'm going to make my own decision. I'm going to be free. I'm going to liberate myself from all of the stress and dependencies that I've built up in my life, because we are so interconnected with the fabric of society. It's sometimes hard to pull away, isn't it?
Yeah, it's incredibly hard. And I mean, often people do have to suffer to actually get to a point where you are like, oh, I really can't do it anymore like this, or I'm losing my strength, I'm losing my joy, or I can't go about my everyday life anymore, or shit, this thing is happening to me again for the 100th time now. There must be something more to it. And I mean, you kind of have to get to this point where you really want to change something to be, to have the capacity to look at it, and to look at your pattern that is like directing you, or on your belief system, or whatever it is that you learned along the way. Sometimes it's society, but mainly it's also like patterns or behaviors you learned growing up from your family, teachers, kindergarten teachers. Like we are so vulnerable when we are young, and so we get shaped by all these influences, and which is perfectly fine. It's not a mistake or anything about guilt or none of these. It's just a normal aspect of life. But if at one point you desire to be more free from that, because maybe some of these things are not serving you anymore, they may have been serving you well in the past, but now they can maybe stand in your way for achieving the life that you wish for, and then it's time to maybe get some help from friends, family, from a psychologist, from whatever is of support for you, and have a look at a bit deeper.
Yeah, obviously it's going to be difficult for us to venture into the depth, as it were, of the psychology of change, or the need for change, because there's just such a vast topic for us to look at. I mean, as you were talking about change there, it kind of struck me. I remember reading many articles and books, and one thing which people point out is the only thing that is constant is change. So when we go through our lives, our perspectives change, the way we perceive ourselves changes as well. And sometimes we struggle with that. And this, I suppose, brings into question identity. Who am I? And that may be a discussion point we would like to look at further on. But it is quite a relevant issue today. Who am I, and what do I want? And then how do I get it is a completely different topic.
Yeah, I mean, especially today, identity becomes more and more present with people, because as a functioning member of society, I would say, like, you kind of have to wear an identity. If you were alone, there wouldn't be a need for identity. You could like go back to the basics, go back to the emotions and the needs, and you don't have to bundle it up to represent something. You would live from moment to moment, basically. That's quite a Buddhist view of point, I would say. Like Buddhist psychotherapy is working with that approach, that is like more focused on what's there at the current moment, and is like going away from everything that's related to a concept. And so in the end, identity is also kind of a concept that you are building. It's also a way to function in this world. Like, our society is super complex, and we have to navigate our ways through it. We have to filter so many information, and it's becoming more and more. And identity is kind of a way to help you to define your role, and make the decisions, like all these micro decisions that we are taking in one day, which are hundreds. Identity can be helpful to navigate there.
And is there a connection and I'm just throwing a thought here, is there a connection between identity and empowerment, or are these two completely random things in psychology?
I mean, you could make a connection, certainly. The approach would be, why am I behaving like this? Why do I have a certain need? Or why do I display a certain behavior? And you understand that this is not random. This is not something that's happening to you, but this is tied to your history. Like, you have reasons to behave in the way that you are behaving, and the psychology is looking at it. So it's actually a tool to understand where you are coming from, and understand why are you suffering from a certain situation, or a certain thing, or a certain behavior even that you are not comfortable with. And their empowerment would be like, hey, because I'm able to understand it, I can now see where I'm at, and I can choose differently, and I can choose in a way that serves me and that I desire and that brings me joy and contentment. And so this would be like the psychological approach, I would say, or therapeutic approach in a in-depth way. And looking at identity, perhaps identity can also be a tool for you to empower you, because you can say, like, I mean, identity is kind of created. It's not something that you are born with. It's relating to the context that you are in as well, and it's shaped, and you can also actively shape it. And so it can be a tool for you to empower you.
When we talk about empowerment, there are so many different angles that we can approach the topic from. I tend to think of empowerment nowadays from the perspective of gender equality, especially in feminism, in the goal of creating a situation under which women can have a more fair representation of their true abilities within society. But empowerment doesn't necessarily have to have any kind of gender politics involved either. It can be very individualistic. What is your main focus on empowerment, or is that unfair? Do you have many focal points with empowerment?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Like, because when you refer to gender and society, in this sense, identity is also like used to navigate that struggle, like to fight for rights, for example, to fight for acceptance, like to being empowered in relation to the people around you, like being empowered because you are saying, like, hey, I'm not agreeing to that, what's happening around me, and I want to change it. Like, this is my purpose, or this is my mission at that moment. And my focal point would be like the process within the person. Like, maybe, for example, there is a person who wants to do a certain thing or achieve a certain thing, or maybe even fight for gender equality, or wants to be seen. And then my question is, like, what keeps the person from acting on it? What makes the person hold back? And why is the person not fulfilling their own purpose? And that's where my focus point on empowerment is, like, how can I help people getting to fulfill what is their inner core and what they want to take into the outside world.
And how do you establish this? I guess it's not simply a question of what do you want to do? Okay, let's go and do it. I imagine there's a bit of a process behind it, isn't there?
Yes, definitely. And I do think it's a lifelong process, actually. And probably, like, you've been talking about change before. I also have to get the sense that also that maybe your purpose, or in the way it's showing in the outside world, can change over your life span, like, or your focus, what you're actually following, or how you're following it. And so for every person, it's a bit different. Like, some people have to do a lot of work, other people just need a little bit, like. And it all starts with, if you are facing trouble, like any kind of obstacle, I would say, in your life now, then you can start at that obstacle and go from there and go deeper from there. So for every person, it may show in a different way. Like, for one person, it may be like hang on, I was a painter and I can't pick up my pencil since 6 months now. So we go from there and we are looking for the reasons. And for another person, it might be like, oh, I'm a workaholic and I can't stop. And so then you can see and look behind, okay, what's the fear behind changing something, and what's the fear that keeps the person running and following this old pattern. And so you always start at the current thing that's surfacing, and then you go on a journey that goes deeper. And I don't know where it takes us. Like, I don't know either. Like, every person is so different. And it may be that we meet once, and it can also be that we meet 10 times. So every journey is different.
I've heard this in a number of different contexts. It's a bit like stress. So for some people, the consequences of stress can manifest themselves in different ways. For some people, they get a rash. For other people, they can't sleep. For other people, they feel certain kinds of pains and aches and so on. So as you say, it's very individualistic how people find the problems and the consequences that they suffer thereafter. So with regards to looking at it from the perspective then of empowerment, and if we take I like the workaholic example, because I think a lot of people nowadays, when we talk about identity, they connect identity a lot with what they do. So when I normally meet people for the first time, I ask them, okay, can you tell me about yourself? They'll tell me their name, they'll tell me their age, and then they'll tell me what their job is. And so therefore, what we do seems to be universally quite highly reflected in our identity, or at least our self-awareness. Because of the stress that modern society puts us under, workaholic, or people who want to work or feel they have to work, it's a growing phenomenon which really leads to other kind of health risks and other physical and psychological consequences. What do I have to realize? And I know this is, as we said before, you can't generalize for everybody, but is it fear of losing my job, or fear of being overtaken by other people? Or is it something completely different, perhaps, that I have to realize before I can empower myself to say, that's it, I'm not going to work like this anymore?
I mean, you can always say that's it without realizing it. And I would say this will not be lasting. So it's always worth understanding why we are doing the things that we are doing. And either of the explanations you mentioned before is a possible one, but we don't know if that person, like, there can be so many different reasons. But this is like exactly like we have these inner drivers that drive us. Like, they can be like, I'm okay if I'm perfect, so I try to do everything perfect all the time. I'm very detail oriented. I do my work 150% and everything is perfect. I'm under constant stress for making it perfect. Or I can have the inner driver, I have to work hard. And as you said before, it's very tightly glued to the identity in our society, because we are valuing work a lot, and we connect it to all kind of stereotypes that are in our head, like status and income, and if the person is like smart or not smart, like they're all like you mention your job and and there's a complete picture about that person. Like and we cannot help ourselves. It's normal. Stereotypes are just coming up. The brain is using them for energy saving, doing some shortcuts, and it's normal. But in the second step, we can readjust, and that's actually psychological work. Like, at first there are automatisms, and in the second step you can readjust, and that's the step where power comes in again, where you actually actively choose something. But for that, you have to be aware. If you're not aware, you cannot choose. And this is like with all psychological topics, like awareness is at least 50% of the work. Like, if you have done this step to become aware of something, then that's the hardest one. And after doing that step, you can actually work with what you realized. And this example with a workaholic, there will be an inner driver working that person. So an inner driver is always there to protect us in the first place. So we don't feel okay, but we think if we do something perfect, or if we work hard, or if we adapt, or if we are fast, or whatever the inner driver is, then we will be okay. So it's actually fear-based. It's always some kind of fear that's working. And then you can see, okay, how is it serving me? Why is it serving me? Why do I have it in the first place? Who gave me that feedback as a young person that I'm okay if I'm just working hard enough? And and then as soon as you kind of befriend that inner driver and go in an interaction and in communication with it, then you can slowly create some space for yourself and alternative ways of acting, and you're not only a victim anymore, but you see, okay, this is happening. I know that. I experienced it a lot of time. I know that inner bully that's pushing me there right now. And I know he's meaning well. He's meaning well. He doesn't intend to do something harmful, but it's actually not working for me at the moment. And I want something else, and then I can take a decision.
It's also interesting when I reflect, and I have to say, I'm skipping over lots of notes that I've made here because the topic can just go in so many different directions. But just picking up on some of the things that we've mentioned, I find it interesting how Generation Z and Generation Alpha approach work, or the concept of work, because whenever I read material about human resources management and so on, a lot of people say, okay, Generation Z, they want to work to live. They don't want to live to work. So what that kind of says to me is that they don't want to be identified by the job that they do. And they feel themselves empowered enough that they can make that decision. Is there a psychological difference then between the way these generations approach life? Or is that even possible to ask?
For me, it's actually, I have the impression that they may use work less as a status or as a part of proving their own worth. But I do think that for them it's often especially important to do a work that's actually purposeful and that's making a difference. And they may not count the hours of how many hours they are working or how hard, but maybe they are more goal-oriented or like result-oriented to see like, hey, is my work actually making a difference? Because I mean, we have like an employee market at the moment. That means like people are less under pressure to actually find a job. Like people know that there are loads of jobs and a shortage of work. So it's actually, I think this is also helping that development to be that makes it possible that this development can happen because people are less under pressure from the market, and that actually puts these young people in a position without pressure where they can say, hey, I really want to take a look, like how can I serve and how can I do something meaningful and purposeful. And I've maybe seen my parents and my grandparents, and I know that they've been stressed. I know that they've become sick from work and sick from stress, and I'm not stepping in their footsteps and having a 40-50 hours week and risking my mental health, but I'm actually knowing that mental health is a topic because that's also something that really has changed a lot in the last few years, that we are talking about mental health now. Like in times where I was living in England and visiting Australia as well, I was surprised, like that was like 10 years ago and people were talking about mental health, and I was like, oh, in my home country, Germany, nobody's talking about that. I mean, we can get it from the health system. We can get psychological support. It's actually paid for, but nobody's talking about it. And so this is changing here right now. And I think that this is also a reason why younger people are aware of this and are able to choose a healthier lifestyle.
It does seem to be still a bit of a taboo topic, as you say. Maybe it's interesting that you say that in the UK or in Australia, it was less of a taboo a few years ago than it was in Germany. I still feel that it remains a taboo even in the UK. Even today, people don't want to openly discuss their weaknesses so much. And mental health issues always fall into the category of this is a weakness of some description. But we are quite happy to talk about, oh yeah, I hurt my knee, or I can't walk anymore, or my back hurts. But we don't want to talk about mental stresses, and I find that quite interesting, as you point out. It's interesting. Okay, we can keep talking, and I know that this is one of the things that I tend to have as a problem. But if we want to then wrap up, as it were, what is your project work then on empowerment? What direction are you taking, and what can we look forward to seeing from you in the near future?
I would love to do one more reference before we wrap up,
Please,
because
please.
we're just mentioning the back pain and like how we use our bodies. I mean, our bodies are always reflecting our soul. This is like normal. This is one level is the physical, the other one is the emotional. But also, in society, we kind of like went more for the body because it's more accepted. But it's also like always worth listening to it, like especially when it comes to emotions. Like as I was saying before, everybody's in a different place, so the work with different people looks differently. And for some people, it's even the question: how can I actually access my emotions in the first place? Because I don't feel it. I don't feel them. I don't feel fear. I don't have any access to the things I'm scared of, because I don't feel scared. I never feel scared. And then you have a look at the body. If people are carrying a lot of tension in their bodies, it's very difficult to feel fear, because fear is actually emotion that creates tension in a body. So if you're under a lot of stress and tension anyway, it's very difficult to differentiate. And so you have to work with people. Okay, how is it showing in your body? Oh, maybe it's a certain back pain in a certain place that appears. And then like, this is my sign for fear. Like, this is my hint. This is what I'm feeling at the moment. So it's also like the body is like something to access the deeper meaning of it. And when the body is like showing us something, and if it's a back pain or whatever is accepted by society, there's also valuable content behind it. That's what I wanted to say. I'm just working on an Instagram channel where I drop little bits of knowledge and some kind of like maybe some thoughts and knowledge from in regards of psychology, and where I also am open to being contacted for sessions for working on empowering yourself. I'm also, at the moment, I'm doing a group for women every Tuesday night. That's also about creative work and empowerment, and to access this place in yourself. This is like independent from society, from beliefs, from demands that come from the outside, and really like finding this sheltered and resourceful place within yourself and create from there. And this group is wrapping up now in January, but I definitely will start a new group in March again. And hopefully also my book next year. So just marching on.
Yeah, fantastic. Great to hear about this. Obviously, your book. That will be in German, I guess, though, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Aber das schaffe ich. Yeah. So no, it's okay. My German is all right. I don't know about the other people listening, but I should be able to manage at least the introduction. No, just joking. But yeah, okay. Also, this group, it'll be great to have some more details I can put into the podcast notes then, as a kind of little mini advert for your group in March then. Mm-hmm. And great. Also, I'd love to have your Instagram handle as well, if you tell me where people can find you on Instagram. And then, speak with me again, please, about some of the other topics that you mentioned when we were discussing this previously.
Thank you.
Two and a mic.